जी अस्सलाम वालेकुम वेलकम टू माय चैनल लर्निंग हब 016। आज हम लोग कर रहे हैं गेस्ट पेपर सेकंड ईयर के पंजाब टेक्स्ट बुक बोर्ड से। और सबसे पहले तो फर्स्ट चैप्टर है द डाइंग सन। अच्छा, इसमें एक चीज़ आप लोगों ने अपने जहन में रखनी है कि ये जो गेस्ट पेपर हैं ये टेक्स्ट बुक के क्वेश्चंस के अलावा जो चैप्टर के अंदर से एडिशनल क्वेश्चंस हैं वो भी इसमें मेंशन किए गए हैं। तो लेट्स स्टार्ट दिस। फर्स्ट क्वेश्चन है हमारे पास, what happened when the wandering star came nearer and nearer? What are the planets and how did they come into existence? What are stars? Why is there no life on stars? Write a note on the beginning of life on Earth. Why are human beings afraid of the universe? What are the necessary conditions for life to exist? Second chapter है using the scientific method. First question is, how has the scientific method helped us in our fight against disease? Second one is, how has the scientific method helped us in production and preservation of food? We are generally less fearful than our ancestors. What were they afraid of? अच्छा, इसमें एक चीज़ आप लोगों ने जहन में रखनी है कि ये जो क्वेश्चंस हैं इनकी स्टेटमेंट्स थोड़ी सी मॉडिफाइड भी आ सकती हैं, बट आंसर्स ऑलमोस्ट वही होंगे जो इन क्वेश्चंस पे अप्लाई होते हैं. How has the scientific method enabled us to get over the old fears? Next chapter है why boys fail in college. First question is, how does a mistaken ambition on the part of boys and their parents lead to failure? How does financial pressure lead to failure? How can it be controlled? ये दो डिफरेंट क्वेश्चन है, ये अलग से भी आ सकते हैं और इकट्ठे भी आ सकते हैं. To what extent does the question of health lead to failure at college? इसमें भी आप ये भी ऐड कर सकते हैं कि हाउ कैन दिस काइंड ऑफ फेलियर्स बी कंट्रोल्ड. What place would you accord to a sportsman at college? Who are lazy bluffers? How many classes of failing boys are there? What are nervous habits? How can they be uprooted? Why do the bright students fail? What should be the duty of a college dean? Dean basically head को कहते हैं, तो यहाँ पे college head या head master भी लिखा हुआ आ सकता है. Next chapter is end of term. What was Dash's attitude towards school as a schoolboy? Dashes liked holidays for freedom. Freedom from what? Wishes not come true in this life. Writes Dashes. What were the things he longed for but couldn't have? What did Dashes do with his pocket money? Which night of the week was the best night for Dashes? अच्छा, ये क्वेश्चन थोड़ा सा मॉडिफाइड इस सेंस में भी आ सकता है कि व्हाट वर द फीलिंग्स ऑफ डेविड डैशेस ऑन फ्राइडे नाइट. इसी तरह नेक्स्ट क्वेश्चन है, विच नाइट ऑफ द वीक वाज द वर्स्ट नाइट ऑफ द वीक फॉर डैशेस, और ये भी इस तरह आ सकता है, व्हाट वर फीलिंग ऑफ डेविड डैशेस ऑन संडे नाइट. व्हाट आर अनएक्सपेक्टेड रेस्पाइट्स? Why did Dashes call summer holidays the mythical summer holidays? Next chapter is on destroying books. First question is, what sort of books were presented by the British public to the soldiers? Why should the bad books be destroyed? Why could the author not burn the unwanted books? Did the writer come to have a sad feeling for those books once he had got rid of them? ये क्वेश्चन ऐसे भी आ सकता है, what were the feelings of the writer after throwing the books into the river? Why did the writer want to get rid of the books? Why did the writer call himself an ass? Describe the fears of the writers throughout his adventure. इसमें वो पुलिसमैन वाला भी आ जाएगा और जो है वो बाकी splashing sound जो है उसको भी आपने explain करना है. Next chapter is the man who was a hospital. How did the writer come to know of his bad liver? What was the disease the writer discovered he did not have? Describe the writer's visit to the medical man. What was the prescription written by the doctor for the writer? What was the effect of prescription on the writer's health? Next chapter is my financial career. Why did the manager come to think that the writer had an awful secret to reveal? What were the blunders Leacock commit in the bank? After his misadventure in the bank, where did the writer keep his money? How much was the writer's salary raised? Next chapter is China's way to progress. Why has the world changed its attitude towards China? Discuss the Chinese agriculture system. Write a note on Chinese women. What are the social security benefits provided to a Chinese worker? अच्छा इसमें आप लोगों ने एक चीज़ गौर करनी है कि चाइनीज़ वेमेन के बेनिफिट्स और जो है चाइनीज़ वर्कर के डिफरेंट हैं वेमेन में जेंडर स्पेसिफिक चीज़ें भी आ जाती हैं फॉर एग्जांपल मैटरनिटी लीव जबकि चाइनीज़ वर्कर के लिए आपने जनरल रूल्स लिखने हैं वो फीमेल और मेल वर्कर दोनों के लिए हैं इसलिए आपने इन दोनों क्वेश्चंस को डिस्टिंग्विश्ड लर्न करना है इट इज़ द पीपल एंड नॉट द थिंग्स दैट आर डिसेसिव डिस्कस ये माओ का मैग्जम है इसको आपने एक्सप्लेन करना है Why do people in China do not shift to bigger cities or what is decentralized economy? Next chapter is hunger and population explosion. What does hunger mean on a large scale? Describe some great famines of the past. How do famines occur? What is the main reason of population increase today? Why is the birth rate not so high in the most of the advanced countries? Give a brief account of the poor economic conditions prevailing in underdeveloped countries. Next chapter is the jewel of the world. Give an account of the early career of Abdurrahman I, his dramatic escape, and his adventures in Africa. What did the Abbasi Caliph say on receiving the head of his governor? What did Al Hakam do to promote learning and scholarship in his kingdom? Next one is first hero of our book 2, first year at Harrow. Why could Churchill not do well in the examination? How did Churchill do his Latin paper? और ये क्वेश्चन इस तरह भी आ सकता है How did Churchill do his entrance exam at Harrow? What good did Churchill's 3-year stay at Harrow do to him? Where was Churchill's name in the school list? यहाँ पे alphabetical order में था तो school list के according आपने लिखना है Very next question. Where was Churchill placed as a student in school? यहाँ पे आपने as a student वो किस rank में रखा गया था school में वो mention करना है Next chapter is Hitch-Hiking across the Sahara. First question is, give an idea of the size of the Sahara Desert. How did Christopher manage to get a seat in the weapons carrier? What was the most noticeable feature of the desert city named Gardaya? What did the driver of the truck tell Christopher about the 3 Englishmen who had attempted to cross the desert? What is difference between Algolia and Insala? दोनों का compare and contrast. Who was Professor Claude Bellangernon? How did he save Christopher's life? Describe the events leading to the killing of a camel. Describe their journey through the land of thirst and death. यहाँ पे सैंडस्टॉर्म का जिक्र भी आप लोगों ने अंदर करना है Sir Alexander Fleming, next chapter है What are antiseptics? What is antiseptic method? What was the chief defect of antiseptic method? What is disease? अच्छा ये डेफिनेशन अक्सर साइंसेस के स्टूडेंट्स अपने अकॉर्डिंग लिख देते हैं बट चूंकि लैंग्वेज का पेपर और आपके चैप्टर की कॉम्प्रीहेंशन का टेस्ट है सो यू हैव टू राइट डाउन द आंसर मेंशन इन द चैप्टर The disease is actually a fight between the leukocyte and the white blood cells and the germs, which continues till the death of either patient or the germs. When and how did Fleming discover penicillin? Dates आपने ज़रूर याद करनी है. What do you know of the Oxford team? Describe penicillin as a wonder drug. Next chapter is Louis Pasteur. Give some instances of Pasteur's patriotism. What is meant by spontaneous generation? How did Pasteur prove it wrong? When and how did Pasteur discover methods of making vaccine? How did Pasteur show the way to the other scientists? Write a note on Pasteur's work on silkworm industry. Next chapter is Mustafa Kamal. Why was Mustafa Kamal sent to Anatolia? Write a note on Mustafa Kamal's activity in Anatolia. Why did Mehmed order Mustafa Kamal to return to Constantinople? How did Mehmed try to regain Anatolia for himself? What were the terms offered to Turkey by the Allies? Write a note on Mustafa Kamal as a nation builder and savior of Turkey. नेक्स्ट यहाँ पे हमारी बुक 2 ख़त्म हो जाती है. नेक्स्ट हम मूव कर रहे हैं नॉवल की तरफ. इसमें भी मैं आपको चैप्टर वाइज जो है वो सारे क्वेश्चंस बताती हूँ. गुड बाय मिस्टर चिप्स चैप्टर 1. राइट अ नोट ऑन मिस्टर चिप्स. अच्छा, इस नोट में पूरी डिटेल्स आ जाएंगी, उसकी बर्थ, उसकी जो है वो उसका प्रोफेशन, उसके लुक्स, उसका फैशन स्टाइल, ईच एंड एवरीथिंग. ताकि जब आपको अलग अलग से कोई भी क्वेश्चन आए, फॉर एग्जांपल व्हेन डिड मिस्टर चिप्स व्हेन वाज मिस्टर चिप्स बॉर्न, तो आपको उस क्वेश्चन का आंसर आता हो जो कि इस क्वेश्चन के अंदर कवर हो रहा है. सो नॉवल में जितने भी क्वेश्चंस मैं आपको बता रही हूँ वो ऑलमोस्ट एक से ज़्यादा आंसर्स को कवर करते हैं. सो यू पीपल हैव टू write detailed answers. Next one is how did Chips measure his time? Who was Dr. Marriwell? ये क्वेश्चन ऐसे भी आ सकता है. What was the name of Mr. Chips' doctor? How often did he visit Mr. Chips? Why did Chips leave Malbury? When did Chips join the Brookfield? Who was the headmaster when Mr. Chips joined the school? What kind of fellow was Mr. Weatherby? And when did he die? Describe the experience of Mr. Chips taking his first class. What happened in his class? Who was the Kule? Who was Kule and what did he do? अच्छा, इसमें आपने ये भी mention करना है कि what punishment did Mr. Chips inflict upon Kule on throwing the desk lid? Chapter 2. Write a detailed note on Brookfield. Once again, detailed note ताकि आपको इसमें से कोई question, for example, when was the structure of Brookfield rebuilt? तो ये सारी details आपने लिखनी है. What was the status of Brookfield as a school? What kind of people did Brookfield supply? What was the inadequacy of Chip's qualifications? When did Chips retire for the first time and what was presented to him at the time of retirement? Chapter 3. Who was Mrs. Wickett? Where did she live? Where did Mr. Chips live after his retirement? How did Chips spend his time after his retirement? उसकी activities लिखनी है आपने. How did Chips entertain his visitors or what did Chips serve to his visitors? Who was Branksome? Who was Major Collingwood and how did he die? What kind of books did Mr. Chips read? Chapter 4. Where and with whom did Chips spend his summer holidays of 1896? What happened at the Great Gable? How did Chips meet Catherine? How did Chips hurt his ankle? ये भी आप detailed incident लिखेंगे. Write a note on Catherine Bridges. Once again detailed incident, उसकी looks, उसका profession, उसके views, ताकि आपको अंदर से कोई भी question आए तो आप उसे cover कर सकें. Who were the favorite writers of Catherine? What were Chip's views about the modern women of 90s? Chapter 5. What is the significance of the sentence "Goodbye, Mr. Chips," or describe the meeting of Chips and Catherine a night before their marriage? Where from did Catherine marriage? Chapter 6. Was Mr. Chips' marriage successful? How did marriage work on Chips? Yeah, how did Catherine influence Mr. Chips? Or what changes did marriage bring in Chips? ये तीनों स्टेटमेंट्स में आ सकता है. How did Catherine urge Mr. Chips to arrange a match between the Brookfield and Mission School? Chapter 7. How did Catherine help Chips in disciplinary matters? Did Catherine always plead for leniency? Why could Chips not write down his memories? Chapter 8. When and how did Catherine die? Who was Faulkner and what did he ask Chips? What was the April foolery Chips faced? Chapter 9. What sort of gown did Chips wear after the death of his wife? Who was Mr. Lollet George and how did he react to the strange comment of Mr. Chips? Chapter 10. Who was Meldrum and when did he die? Who succeeded Weatherby as a head? Who became an acting head of the Brookfield when Meldrum died? Or when did Chips become an acting head of the Brookfield for the first time? What kind of personality was Mr. Ralston? Why could Chips not put up with him? Who was Grayson? Why was he preoccupied? Chapter 11. Describe the row between Chips and Ralston. What were the reasons Ralston gave Chips to retire? Who was Sir John Rivers and why did he visit Chips? Chapter 12. When and why did Ralston leave Brookfield? Who was Chatteris when he died? When did he join the Brookfield? What happened to Chips in 1913 and why did he take retirement? Briefly describe Chips' farewell speech. ये बहुत important question है, बारहा आया हुआ है. Chapter 13. Who was Forrester? What joke did Chips make about him? How did the Brookfield serve during the war, or how did the Brookfield serve England in peace and war? Who reappointed Mr. Chips back to the Brookfield? Why did Chatteris ask Chips to rejoin the school? When did Chips become acting head of the Brookfield for the second time? Chapter 14. What was meant by Chips' latest? Who was Max Steffel? Chapter 15. How did Chips take his classes during the war? Describe the horror of air raid at the Brookfield during the war. When did Chips retire for the second time? Chapter 16. How did Chips welcome the newcomers? What was Chips' will, or when did Chips make his will? What was financial condition of Mr. Chips after the retirement? Chapter 17. What were the two things Chips never did in his life? Who was Linford, or describe Chips' last visitor, the meeting they had? Chapter 18. When did Chips die, and how old was he when he died? Who found Mr. Chips faint in his room? So, these were all the important questions from book 2 and the novel. Best of luck for your exams. See you in next video. Allah Hafiz.